Live from London, this is The World Today.
Hello, I'm Robin Dwyer. Welcome to the programme. Our top stories. Disastrous beyond comprehension. Thousands left dead on Libya's coast after a wave of water engulfs the city of Derna. Almost 3,000 people are now known to have died in the earthquake in Morocco, making it the country's deadliest in 70 years. Vladimir Putin talks of possibilities for military cooperation with the DPRK after talks with Kim Jong-un. And missile strikes on the Crimean port of Sevastopol leave Russian warships damaged and dozens of people injured. Moroccan authorities say almost 3,000 people are now known to have died in Friday's earthquake, making it the country's deadliest since 1960. International aid and rescue teams continue to arrive, but accessing the remote areas affected remains a challenge. Our correspondent Giles Gibson is in Marrakesh. So, Giles, we talked about challenges in remote areas. Just how difficult is it to access those?
Well, we have a team who, over the course of the day, has been making their way slowly in a vehicle up into the high Atlas Mountains. They've been updating me throughout the day, and they've been telling me that the roads, at least the sort of initial roads in the foothills of the mountains, are movable, are passable, but clearly there is just a huge amount of traffic in terms of relief efforts and search and rescue teams, so that traffic is moving slowly. I'm also hearing that medical supplies are now starting to get out into some of the more remote villages, and there are also just so many heartbreaking stories coming out of these small remote villages. For example, one village where there is a young man who's broken his back, and so clearly he is now waiting for some sort of medevac, which is going to be incredibly complicated, getting someone in that kind of condition down from a village so high up in the mountains. Over the course of Tuesday, we were hearing that some villages had not been reached yet with any search and rescue teams or any aid whatsoever. What we've been trying to establish really is whether that's still the case. It appears to be not, but clearly it is very, very difficult to just establish how many towns could still be waiting for some sort of assistance.
So recovery work and aid are continuing to flow into the country, but are thoughts now beginning to turn to rebuilding?
Well, earlier in the week, we heard from the Moroccan Prime Minister, who said that the priority was still very much the search and rescue operation. But of course, as we get out of that 72-hour window, that's when, generally in these kinds of disasters, that's when search and rescue teams believe they're most likely to find survivors under the rubble. As we get out of that window, that's when thoughts are shifting to the medium term. We have been hearing from the government that they are going to assess the numbers of houses and buildings that have been destroyed, and then in the long term, push some sort of program forward to rebuild those houses. But there's also some attention to the medium term, just making sure that people in these villages have the supplies and the shelter they need for the next few months while they wait for their houses to potentially rebuild. And I think that's why, for example, aid organizations such as the IRFC are calling for well over over $110 million to be given by people all over the world, so that they can start to at least make sure these communities are safeguarded for the medium term as we head into the winter.
Giles, thank you very much. Our correspondent Giles Gibson in Marrakesh. Well, the remote areas worst affected by the earthquake have been enormously difficult to reach, but now international aid is slowly starting to trickle through. Our correspondent Ken Brown reports.
4 days after Morocco's deadliest earthquake in over 60 years, the true scale of this catastrophe is clear to see. Houses, villages and entire communities completely destroyed. International aid has been arriving from many parts of the world. Much needed rescue equipment, excavation machinery and personnel. Aid agencies such as the Chinese Red Cross Society are providing crucial financial assistance to the Red Crescent in Morocco to carry out disaster relief work.
As of now, The Red Cross Society of China has announced that it will provide emergency assistance of $200,000 of cash to the Moroccan Red Crescent Society. And the China International Development Cooperation Agency has also announced that it's willing to provide emergency humanitarian assistance. Some other Chinese departments, institutions, and enterprises have also expressed their willingness to donate.
International aid has been arriving at the Marrakesh airport behind me, with search and rescue teams already on the ground from Spain, Qatar, the UAE and the UK. Offers of help from France, the United States and elsewhere have yet to be accepted. The UK International Search and Rescue crew brought a team of 62 specialists, 4 search dogs, rescue equipment and a medical assessment team. Corey is one of the search dogs and is on his first deployment with Canine Handler Crew Commander Gary Carroll alongside his colleague Martin Forlan.
We're expecting to potentially be accessing remote villages to go and help people. Not the same kind of situation that we saw in Turkey with a large city collapse, but more sort of remote villages that seem to need assistance at the moment.
The logistics in the Atlas Mountains have hampered the rescue efforts. Traffic is at a standstill on the way to the worst-hit region, and some remote villages are still only accessible by the military helicopters flying overhead. Roads are still being cleared, with some completely closed, often the only way to some of the mountain villages. International aid has arrived, but getting it to where people most desperately need it is still the challenge. A race against time to find survivors. Ken Brown, CGTN, Atlas Mountains, Morocco.
Morocco's need for aid has struck a chord in France, which has strong historical ties to the country. Millions in donations have already been raised. Our correspondent in Paris, Stuart Smith, has been to meet some of those trying to help.
More than 2,000 kilometres away from the earthquake's epicenter, residents in the French capital with links to Morocco are discussing how they can help. Casablanca and Marrakesh are popular tourist destinations for French holidaymakers, and there are over 8 million Moroccans in France.
Franco-Moroccan citizens were deeply affected and upset by this earthquake, but at the same time it triggered an extraordinary wave of solidarity. People immediately offered to help, whether in terms of equipment, voluntary work, donations or local involvement in Morocco. I've got nurses and young people who want to go there and help as they can, by treating people or rebuilding roads and infrastructure. Unfortunately, every disaster has its heavy side, but it also has a positive side, which is the surge of solidarity.
While goodwill in the form of clothes, shoes or other supplies is appreciated, it's far cheaper to buy the vast majority of items in Morocco or from neighbouring countries and transport them to the affected area.
The association set up a crisis unit on Saturday. We're looking at the most practical ways of providing help. We say no to sending food aid. It's better to collect money and help small local businesses there. When it comes to transferring equipment, we're focusing on medical supplies, blankets and tents.
Just as we were filming, the association got word that much of what they'd gathered to send to Morocco will not be allowed. Things like food and clothing, authorities there say they have enough of. Only medical equipment like wheelchairs and crutches, as well as certain medicines, will be allowed to cross the border, highlighting the tension between the people here in France who want to help in any way they can and the realities of what's really needed on the ground in Morocco. When people think disaster in France, the country's biggest grant-making organisation often comes to mind. Fondation de France has decades of experience in disaster response, including in Turkey and Syria earlier in the year. It was already funding local and regional organisations in Morocco, and now it's using those contacts to build a picture village by village and coordinate a bespoke response.
We are doing coordination of probably 100 and several hundreds of non-profit local organizations on the ground, and we will monitor everything what is doing, and we will coordinate with them. Our aim in Fondation France is guarantee every donor that every euro is worth it and useful on the ground.
While Rabat still hasn't asked the French government for aid, NGOs are free to send money to established local organisations. Part of the foundation's strategy involves paying locals who have lost their jobs and their possessions to help their own communities recover from a disaster. Donors have raised €4 million in 72 hours, money which is already being used.
That's heartwarming really to see that we got gifts from €5 to a lot more, and it's really moving to see and to have a little message by mail of people say, well, I am giving you €10, I cannot give you more, but well, I trust you and I'm confident it will be useful for Moroccan people.
Billions of euros will be required in immediate assistance and for rebuilding, and agencies are already thinking of long-term plans. What will be required in a week's time and a month's time? The warm temperatures won't last long, and snow will soon descend on the Atlas Mountains, and they want to make sure these people have shelter before then. Stuart Smith, CGTN, Paris.
At least 7 people are dead in flooding across southern China after days of persistent rain in the wake of tropical storm Haikui. There have been over 100 landslides in the provinces of Guangxi and Guangdong. Roads are destroyed, trees uprooted, and hundreds of people are cut off. Haikui weakened to a tropical storm after making landfall 8 days ago and bringing the heaviest rainfall since records began in 1952. Firefighters in Indonesia's Sumatra province are battling several peatland wildfires which are burning along a road linking 3 villages. Efforts to bring them under control are being delayed because water has to be brought in from other areas after local reservoirs ran dry. A fire at an apartment block in Hanoi has killed 56 people, including a number of children. The 9-storey building in the Vietnamese capital housed around 150 people. The owner of the building has been detained by police, who accused him of violating fire safety regulations. You're watching CGTN. Still ahead. The leaders of Russia and the DPRK meet for talks, raising the possibility of military cooperation.
Ever wondered what's the difference between a bear and a bull market? Where are the cash cows? And who are the lame ducks? And what exactly are black swans? Grey rhinos? And unicorn companies? Make sense of it all with Global Business, only on CGTN.
There's a new agenda for a new world, accelerating change in almost every part of our lives. It's shifting the norms of how we work, travel, and connect. How we think, interact, and develop. It's a new reality, a new agenda with me, Juliette Mann.
Events have consequences. Words create impact.
One more offensive in a long line of battles that's been ongoing for more.
Just got to be careful here with some gunshots. Excuse us, excuse us.
The world today matters for your world tomorrow.
The number of casualties is growing quickly.
Why, this is one of the hardest hit towns in the region.
The world today, every day on CGTN.
Welcome back. A reminder of our top story. Almost 3,000 people are now known to have died in the earthquake in Morocco, making it the country's deadliest in 70 years. Russian President Vladimir Putin and the leader of the DPRK, Kim Jong-un, have met for talks. The rare summit was held at Russia's new space launch station. The conflict in Ukraine was among the topics discussed. Putin also said there are possibilities for military cooperation between the two countries. Kim will visit other sites in Russia before heading home to the DPRK, according to President Putin. Our correspondent Alyosha Milenkovic reports from Vladivostok.
This is the moment when the DPRK leader Kim Jong-un arrived at the Vostochny Cosmodrome on his armored train. Minutes later, the host, President Vladimir Putin, extended his arm for a 40-second handshake. This highly anticipated visit was shrouded in a lot of secrecy, as the media were only notified about the meeting location after both parties arrived at the spaceport. And the list of topics to be discussed was the subject of further speculation.
Of course, we need to discuss economic cooperation and humanitarian issues, as well as the situation in the region. We have a lot of issues to discuss. I'm very glad to see you. Thank you for accepting our invitation and coming to Russia.
After receiving his guest, Putin took Kim on a tour around Russia's newest cosmodrome. The DPRK has in recent years been trying to develop its own space program, but without any major breakthroughs so far, which might lend to great interest on DPRK's part to tap on Russian technology and help in this field. Following a closed-door one-on-one meeting between the two leaders, the two parties joined at lunch, where both Putin and Kim made toasts.
Together with Comrade Putin, we've just had an elaborate discussion about the military and political situation on the Korean Peninsula and in Europe, and have come to the conclusion that we need to further intensify strategic and tactical cooperation to ensure safety and guarantee a long-lasting peace, both in the region and in the whole world.
Defense ministers from both sides were present among the delegates, which suggests that military topics were high on the agenda, especially considering Russia's military operation in Ukraine. The DPRK leader had this to say about his hosts.
The Russian army and people will certainly win a great victory in the sacred struggle for the punishment of the great evil that claims hegemony and feeds the expansionist illusion. It will create an environment for peaceful development.
According to reports, after Vostochny, Kim Jong-un is heading to Vladivostok. The meeting between the two leaders is seen in Russia as one more example of the ongoing global changes, and another step in the process of establishing a different and a multipolar world. Alyosha Milenkovic, CGTN, Vladivostok.
Ukraine has confirmed it carried out an attack on the port of Sevastopol in Crimea, hitting naval targets and port infrastructure. 2 Russian warships were damaged by missiles and unmanned boats. 24 people were also injured after a large fire broke out. Russia says several missiles were shot down. Ukraine has stepped up air and sea attacks on the Crimean Peninsula in recent weeks, which it has vowed to take back from Russian control. Well, our correspondent Dasha Chernyshova is in Moscow. So, Dasha, what do we know about this strike on Sevastopol?
Well, the Russian Ministry of Defense has confirmed that Ukraine has launched 10 cruise missiles against the Sergo-Ordzhonikidze ship repair plant in Sevastopol, as well as 3 unmanned sea drones at the Russian ships in the Black Sea. Now, 7 missiles, according to the Russian officials, have been intercepted, and all of the unmanned speedboats have been destroyed. But as a result of being hit by the Ukrainian cruise missiles, the Russian Ministry of Defense says that 2 ships that were undergoing repairs were damaged. So there has been no further information as to the scale of the damage of what has happened at the Sergo-Ordzhonikidze shipyard, but definitely the pictures that we have seen on social media have been showing the flames that have been engulfing the Sergo-Ordzhonikidze ship repair plant. Also, we have heard from the governor of the Sevastopol saying that 24 people have been injured as a result. And of course, this is not the first attack against the Crimea by the Ukrainian armed forces. Moscow has been accusing Ukraine of repeated attacks against the civilian objects as well as the Crimean bridge. So certainly Russia believes that the Ukrainian side is interested in continuing those attacks, and Ukraine itself has claimed that they will continue until they do retake the Crimea. Just to remind you, Moscow says that in 2014, the referendum that was held in the Crimean Peninsula has shown that the region wants to join Russia, and it is described as reunification of Crimea with the Russian Federation. But Ukraine disagrees with this, and that's why they say they will continue to attack the peninsula until the peninsula is back in Ukraine.
And when it comes to the visit by Kim Jong-un to Russia, what do we know about what's been agreed with President Putin?
Well, indeed, the negotiations that have taken place today at the Vostochny Cosmodrome in Russia's Far East have been described as constructive, as fruitful and substantiative. Now, we have heard the Kremlin confirming that the cooperation in the multitude of different areas has been discussed, including in aviation, in transportation, as well as in agriculture, with Russia saying that it has a lot to offer when it comes to the development of agriculture in North Korea. Humanitarian aid issues have also been on the agenda. And most recently, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said that Kim Jong-un was interested in medicine, education, and other humanitarian spheres. So certainly we are expecting more communication and cooperation between these two capitals. But at the same time, there has been a very clear understanding that President Vladimir Putin and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un have been discussing the space industry, and Moscow says this is why the meeting has taken place at the Vostochny Cosmodrome, and the Kremlin is not ruling out the possibility of sending the North Korean astronaut to space. At the same time, we also understand that the military technical cooperation could have been on the agenda, but the Kremlin has said that there are sensitive areas of cooperation which should not be made public, and the continuation of Kim's visit to the locations where the aviation is being produced, as well as some other industrial plants, is only proving that not everything so far has been revealed to the wider public.
Dasha Chernysheva in Moscow, thank you very much. The death toll from the devastating floods in eastern Libya is now confirmed to be at least 5,300. And there are warnings it's likely to rise far beyond that. Tsunami-like waves tore through the coastal city of Derna after 2 dams collapsed on Sunday after heavy rain. Officials say people and property were instantly swept out to sea, and that many bodies are now being washed up on shore. Thousands of people are thought to be missing. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has pitched herself as a champion of EU citizens, leading the charge on key issues like climate change, the economy and democracy. She was speaking at an annual State of the Union address to lawmakers in Strasbourg. Our correspondent Trent Murray reports.
Ursula von der Leyen has not said yet whether she wants a second term as European Commission President, but today's State of the Union very much sounded like the starting gun being fired ahead of those crucial elections in June of next year. She outlined what she saw as the successes of her first term in office, including passing 30 legislative packages aimed at cutting carbon emissions and boosting renewable energy, saving millions of jobs thanks to COVID stimulus packages, and making Europe an attractive place for international businesses to invest. She also spoke out against what she called Russia's aggression in Ukraine, promising that the EU will continue to stick by Kyiv militarily and financially, and pledging to support Ukraine's bid to eventually become a member of the bloc.
I know this is not an easy road. Accession is merits-based, and the Commission will always defend this principle. It takes hard work and leadership, but there is already a lot of progress. We have seen the great strides Ukraine has already made since we granted them candidate status.
The EU chief also announced the bloc would be opening an investigation into the possibility of introducing tariffs on electric vehicles from China, something France has been calling for months. Chinese EV exports are making serious inroads in Europe. This year, 8% of all EVs sold here were from China. That's up from 6% last year and 4% the year before. But the bloc is far from united on the issue. Germany opposes any such measures, fearing it could spark a trade war that will impact its own car brand's strong standing in the Chinese market. It's clear that many European brands feel like they have a growing fight on their hands in their home market and have been pushing the EU to intervene. A call seemingly heard by von der Leyen, who said Brussels would examine whether state subsidies in China are giving their vehicles an unfair pricing advantage in Europe's multi-billion-dollar auto market. Trent Murray, CGTN, Berlin.
The European Union hopes to cut net greenhouse gas emissions by more than half within the next 7 years. And clean energy of all types will play a part, including wind power. CGTN's correspondent Emma Keeling reports.
It's very quiet. So how many people live in the village?
24.
Oh, 24?
Former mechanic Jorge, who manages the site, is someone who's benefited from having CTG's wind farm on his doorstep.
Jorge, I'm seeing a lot of empty houses here. If it wasn't for the wind farm, would there be fewer jobs here for everybody?
Sí, tendría que haberme buscado la vida en otro trabajo, como estuve trabajando fuera, hasta que montaron los molinos y pude venirme al pueblo otra vez.
The 100 turbines here can provide enough power for nearly 500,000 households, nudging Europe towards its carbon target, and creating a big responsibility for Jorge and his boss Adolfo.
So this is Jorge's site. He looks after this area. But what, you come to check on the efficiency every now and again?
Yes, he is Jorge, that there are a person in charge of the maintenance of the wind farm every day. And I'm Adolfo Martinez, I'm the wind performance engineering from CTG.
So here you are, two Spanish guys working for a Chinese company. What do you think of that?
I think this is very special because we have to increase my expertise of the wind technology, and we have to communicate with the other part of the world how they can see the world and how they can move forward the transition between all the kind of energies to the new energies, renewable energies.
Before that, there were more sheep, this time owned by the local mayor himself, who told me he sells all the wool from this special Castilian breed to Chinese customers. So he's well disposed to China already. But it's clear the turbines are welcome.
Do people mind that these giant structures are on the landscape? Does it annoy them?
Que aquí al principio, cuando se estaban poniendo los molinos, o cuando se querían poner los molinos, pues había unos grupucos por ahí que iban siempre pues en contra de todo, en contra de los molinos, en contra de las placas solares, en contra de construir tal. Y ya cuando se les acababan los argumentos, que no nos sabían por qué decir que los molinos no eran buenos.
Eavesdropping on a chat with some of the locals in his nearby bar, it was clear they're also happy to see the turbines on their hillsides.
Claro, económicamente tienes un presupuesto mayor y puedes aspirar a hacer alguna cosa más. Lo que más yo creo que ha influido el parque es obras que eran impensables poderlas realizar, se han logrado realizar. Arreglos de iglesias, arreglos de tal que estaban caídas, o caminos, infraestructuras que era impensable entonces, porque antes cada vez que íbamos a hacer una obra teníamos que poner dinero casi del bolsillo.
Otra cosa que pasa es que al hacer eso pues se van arreglando casas, hay más compraventa de viviendas, hay más tal, y es una oportunidad para el que quiere venir.
Nosotros hacemos actividades sociales, tenemos fisioterapia a todos los vecinos gratis, tenemos viajes, tenemos un montón de actividades y todo gracias al Molinos.
The headlines again. Disastrous beyond comprehension. Thousands left dead on Libya's coast after a wave of water engulfs the city of Derna. Almost 3,000 people are now known to have died in the earthquake in Morocco, making it the country's deadliest in 70 years. And Vladimir Putin talks of possibilities for military cooperation with the DPRK after talks with Kim Jong-un. That is the world today. Thanks for watching. We're back with more news at the top of the hour. Coming up next, it's World Insight. For now, from all of the team in London, it's goodbye.
This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.